The ability of a group of people to do remarkable things hinges on their ability to pull together as a team. That's a quote by Simon Sinek. There are certain factors and behaviors that will help a team to produce excellent results. The main thing is that in the end, they pull together as a team and get the job done no matter what. Today, my focus is going to be on software development projects. I'm going to talk about some research regarding software development projects, and I'm going to give you an actual example that will demonstrate a team in action. It has been reported that 2/3 of software development projects are not on time and not on budget, and often do not meet their business objectives. This is bad. By paying attention to certain factors, critical factors, you can improve the odds that your team will be successful. This research study had to do with factors that lead to successful software development projects. There was a lot of factors involved in this study. These included these 5 key factors, which I feel like are essential for team success. Team composition. It's important that the mix of people on your team is a good mix. It's important that each person brings a special expertise to that team so that they can do the work. It's important that they are each committed to that team's work. It's important that every single member of that team is able to communicate. They're able to present their own opinion and get that out on the table, as well as listen to what others are saying. And finally, it's important that everyone on that team has the same vision and mission, that they know where they're going. The example that I'm going to give you today is based on the 30-year business consulting career of Joel D. Girolamo. He worked in 20 countries and over hundreds and hundreds of companies. This is based on a real situation at actual companies. The way this all starts is that a big competitor of this company, the main company involved here is Data. They have a competitor, Bensoft, and Bensoft is ahead of them. They just launched this new software product that has this new technology in it. What's happened now is that Data, their stock is going down. Not good. The question is, can Data create a new software product, get it on the market with this new technology in time before the company fails and they go bankrupt? That's the question. The key player in this story is Dean Edmondson. And when this story starts, he is a manager of new technology. He has his own task force team, but he also has to work with a lot of other individuals and teams at Data in order to get this whole thing to work. He has to work with Becky, who's the manager of integration services, and he has to work with Tony, who is the director of current products. Tony is a little bit above him in the hierarchy. Both of them have their own teams, so they're very close, but still Tony's a little bit higher up than he is in terms of that. Tony is a very flamboyant guy. He's an Italian guy. He dresses in Italian suits. He looks really good all the time. He's very committed to, very ambitious and committed to enhancing his power and moving up in the company. He's also very self-centered. He cares about what he's doing, not so much about necessarily what other people are doing. He only cooperates with Dean enough to save face. He really, other than that, he's not that interested in it. Dean knows that he has a lot of time pressure with this project. I mean, it is really going to be a big challenge to get this to happen. So he goes to upper management and he says to them, I need more time and more resources. They said to him, you have 15 months and that's it. And you can't have one more penny, you can't hire any more people. Well, Dean's clever and he's very crafty and has a lot of ingenuity, so he decided to bring in this group of developers in India on the team. He knew that they could probably handle doing certain parts of the code and they'd work really cheap and they'd be a good asset to what he was doing since he's in this huge time crunch. Another thing he did is that he could not go outside data to bring in more people, but he could recruit people from other teams within the company to help him. So he went to Human Resources and he convinced them to help him come up with a special questionnaire instrument so that he could really make sure that everyone on his team was very well qualified. This was very helpful because one of the first things Tony did was try to pawn Brad off on him. Brad was on his team and just wanted to get rid of him. Brad did not meet the requirements, so he didn't take him. So Dean was able to get really good people from other teams and other areas of the company to join the team. There's several trials that I'm going to talk about today. They have to overcome these trials in order to be successful. The way this first one starts, there's 3 of them all together. The way the first one starts is that Tony tells the group in India different scheduling dates from those that Dean told them. Well, since they're under all this time pressure and everything, this is crucial. This is a real major problem. It all blows up. Everyone's in Human Resources. They're trying to sort this out. Well, Becky believes that if Dean's gone, she'll be able to move up in the company. So she has her own kind of agenda going on. So when they're over in Human Resources, what she does is she takes Tony's side, even though she knows that's not true about the scheduling dates. So it's Tony and Becky versus Dean. And Human Resources, they're in kind of a bind. They have an ethical policy, so they have to do something. And so they proceeded to fire Dean. When Dean gets this news, he feels like he's been hit by a ton of bricks. What? Can't believe it. Anyway, he goes to his desk and he starts to pack up his personal items. And then a security guard is planning then to usher him out and take him to his car. While this is going on, over in Human Resources, they get a phone call. Ring! Hello? We're just letting you know, we're on our way over there now to arrest Tony Androni for insider trading. What? It turned out that Tony, a few weeks earlier, had heard from his cousin over at Bensoft, told him that Bensoft would be launching this new software with the new technology. Well, Tony, even though he's in management at Data, he owns stock in Data, and he decided to short his stock. This means that if Data was ultimately successful, Tony would lose money. How crazy is that? Not only that, but this is, of course, illegal. Tony's in the office and talking to HR and explaining about all of this. He realizes that he's going to be fired. So he decides to go ahead and tell the truth about this situation and the scheduling dates in India. He told him he lied, that Dean had told the truth. Then Becky came clean and confessed that she had also lied about the scheduling dates. So now Human Resources is busy doing this whole 180-degree turn. They sent Tammy to run into the car to try to catch Dean before he drove away. She walks up to his car and he rolls down the window and she says to him, Dean, there's been a terrible mistake. We don't want to fire you. We want you to stay. Well, Dean's in shock. He's been on a roller coaster ride. He doesn't know what to do. He does drive off and he goes home, but when he gets home, he starts thinking about what is he going to do for his next job. But when he gets home, he realizes that he probably should at least go back and finish the project, because if he doesn't, that's not going to look good for him getting the next job. So he went back. Then a few days later, he's told that he will now be the director of software development. He's been promoted! Wow. And that's how this first trial ends. Phew. So let's look at this in terms of what happened. In terms of team composition, Dean, even though he had limited choices, was very careful about who he put on the team. He brought in the people from India, and he was very careful about selecting people even within the company. Then he made sure they had the right expertise. In terms of commitment and communication, well, Tony and Becky certainly put big challenges on this project in both of those areas. Lying, of course, is not good for communication. So anyway, they got over this hurdle. Dean is the one that was most committed to their vision and mission and got them going back on the right track. There's another hurdle that happens. This is the second trial. This happens because Dean starts to think about, he's talking to the people in India about this project, and what he's hearing is that he says, how's it going? They go, oh, it's going fine, it's going good. And he knows that in the past, what's happened is that they just coast along, and then about 2 weeks before the deadline, there'll be a frenzy of activity, which unfortunately will not result in them completing the project. Not good, especially when everything's on the line for this project. Dean then went to management, and he brought this up in his staff meeting. He said, I want to go to India and talk to them face to face, find out what they're doing, and see if I can motivate them. They said, okay, and we want you to take Becky, Manager of Integration Services, with you. It's important to note that this first trial I told you about did not actually happen until after this. At this point in time, there's nothing bad between Dean and Becky. So off they go to India. They arrive. One of the first things that Dean does is that he talks to the manager of these developers. His name is Advay. He says to him, what's going on? And Advay says, well, everything's going fine. And Dean says, well, I'm really skeptical about that, because I believe if you were truly working on this, you would have some issues. You'd have some questions. Things will be coming up for you. And I'm concerned. I don't want to wait until the last week or two of the project and then have problems surface. So Advay then confessed to him, well, I'm concerned about that too, he said. So then Dean said to him, well, what about this? What about if you identify specific milestones and you create certain deliverables that you turn into me with 2-week intervals from now until the end of the project? Can you do that? And then Advay said, yeah, we can do that. Okay, so that was solved. The next thing Dean asked Advay is he asked him if he could talk to each programmer individually, just introduce himself and find out if they had any problems. Advay was very taken aback by this. He felt like Dean was trying to go over his head or around him or something like that. He didn't like that at all. But Dean was prepared for this reaction. When Dean landed in India, he had the privilege of going into a gift shop, and he noticed that there was a book there that talked about Dr. Callum, who was a past president. He knew that Advay would really respect Dr. Callum. So what he said then in this meeting with him is he said to Advay, would you let Dr. Callum meet individually with each program? And of course he said, yes, of course I would. And then Dean said, well, I'm no different. You should then let me do it. Well, Advay was reluctant, but he went ahead and let Dean go ahead and meet with them anyway. This was huge. This meant that Dean was able to communicate with each one individually, make a personal connection that made a huge difference, and really get each programmer committed to this project. Now, that was the end of the second trial. Now we're moving into the third trial. At the end of the day, Dean went back to the hotel, and he walked in the door. He saw Becky in the bar lounge area waving him, "Hey, come on over." So he went over and joined her, and he ordered a drink, and they started talking. Not too long into the conversation, she says to him, "I'd really like for you to recommend me to the boss." And he's a little bit puzzled. He says to her, "Well, of course I'd recommend you. You always do really good work. Why wouldn't I?" Then she proceeded to touch his sleeve and flirt with him. Well, he isn't like this at all. They are both married to other people, and so, I mean, this is just bad. Well, eventually they end up back in the United States. And at that point, that's when this whole mess with Tony and the SEC and all that blew up. At this point in time, Tony is gone, but Dean's still at the company, and so is Becky. As you can imagine, there's a lot of tension between Dean and Becky right now. In fact, Becky went to her boss and she said, "I think I may have to get another job." Dean arranged a meeting with Becky, and he decided he would just talk to her. He knew that he wanted to not put her on the defensive, but he still wanted to be very direct. He asked her, "Why did you side with Tony when you knew that was wrong?" And she said, "Well, because I thought I'd be able to move from integration over into the development area, and that would advance my career." Yeah, that's not all though. She also told him that she is angry because he rejected her. Then Dean responded to that. He said, "Well, let me just make sure I understand. You feel bad because you tried to get rid of me, and because you tried to seduce me, and you also felt bad at one point because I rejected you. Is that about it?" And any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually any one of these trials could have caused this team to fail, and actually caused the whole company to fail. Because Dean paid attention to these 5 critical factors, and because he had such great interpersonal skill with the people in India, with Becky, and also with even the people that worked for Tony. They also worked on the project and contributed to it, even though Tony didn't necessarily. These 5 critical factors made a huge difference. The composition of the team was important in getting them all working towards the mission. I've talked about several incidences of challenges in terms of commitment and communication. These were people who were pretty flawed, and it was a pretty messy situation. But in the end, they were able to all pull together and work towards the vision and the mission and get this project completed successfully, which they did. The next time you serve on a team, remember that when you pay attention to these 5 critical success factors, and you pull together as a team, you too can do remarkable things.